Hello, and welcome back to another edition of our Website Depot podcast. As ever, I'm your host, Greg Benevent, and I'm once again lucky to be joined by Noel Dombroski. Noel, how are you doing there?
Doing pretty great today, Greg. Feeling very festive. Just,
Yes,
just nice.
yes. Viewer and listener, contrary to what you may believe, we do talk about this a bit ahead of time. That's how Noel was able to have that hat, and I have my green shirt mixed with sunset and/or the onset of nuclear winter behind me. So for that, I think we're jump right into it. Talking about the holidays, talking about the festivities. I know you had something you wanted to share with us, Noel. If you could tell us just a little bit about that there to get us started.
Absolutely. So I took a page out of the Cat Love book. I love making lists. So I
Mhm.
made a little list of some marketing lessons we can learn from Santa Claus.
Hey, all right. That's
Can't think of a
great.
better brand, like universal brand,
Right.
than
Oh
Santa
yeah. No,
Claus.
yes, exactly. Yeah, that's true. That's we're going on centuries now. It's a monopoly.
You could argue it's all free too, because Santa
Right,
doesn't
right.
have to take billboards out. He's
That's a good point. That's a good
yeah.
point. There's a lot of affiliate marketing, a lot of content being shared by others. Yes.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's a good jumping off point right there is that brand identity and brand awareness are a
Mm,
huge lesson we can learn from Santa Claus.
mhm,
I think and in a couple different ways. One that he's instantly recognizable,
right.
without having to funnel in a bunch of money and 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 make
Hmm.
people know who he is. You see Santa and you get it. It clicks. But I think the other part of that's interesting is kind of not being afraid to evolve or change or kind of
Mm,
keep that awareness of who you're trying to market to and where you're marketing and kind of shifting to meet that. So for example, Papa Noel
mhm,
over in Europe dresses a lot differently than Santa Claus in America.
mm,
But all the basics, the important things are the same. You write your
mm,
letter, Santa leaves you presents Christmas morning,
mhm,
and the identity is still there. So I
mhm.
think that's a big one, is not being afraid to evolve and be aware of you know of your audience and where you're at.
Certainly. I mean, it's just trying to think of all the different iterations we've seen of Santa in just our own lifetimes, or even over the last few decades. But the things that do seem to carry from version to version is are those universal traits of it's always someone warm and giving and selfless. And I think that's interesting. It just hits me now that so many of the negative versions of Santa, the dark versions, are all those that subvert those virtues which we so associate with the character. It Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because I'm just thinking about like someone saying like, well, why am I watching this? My company has nothing to do with Santa. It's like, well, think about what we love about Santa and think about how you can incorporate that into your branding, into what you do, even if it's just in a tiny way. Like,
Absolutely. And once you when you can build that foundation, and Santa is, he's had the fortune of, being an established brand since like the
mhm,
1600s. So,
mhm.
obviously small businesses watching this, don't have that. Well, I don't know, maybe some, but and good for you. But
Right.
once you build that foundation, that's when you have that license to be able to kind of shift around. When you see, Santa Claus in a Hawaiian Punch commercial and he's got flip flops on and the Hawaiian shirt, you still know it's Santa Claus because you have all those signals and that warmth. I think is a great point. The philosophy of your company, as long as that is strong and you have that, that base, you really can
Mhm.
have that freedom to kind of evolve and see where are we at, what are people doing, or I don't know. I keep going back to the location thing. Like I think Arizona Sun is one example. They have a
Mm,
lot of like skin protection
certainly.
products, and
Mhm.
the Santa Claus in Hawaii looks a lot different from the Santa Claus on the East Coast. The the people you're
Certainly.
marketing to in that location, where if it's sunny all the time, that's one thing. But another example is they tweaked one of their kits for winter sun essentials because there
Mm,
are things that you need to keep in mind with protecting your skin, whether you're skiing or hiking or whatever.
mhm.
And so to have that awareness to be like, okay, if we're and depending on where you're trying to market to, for that reason. You know, it's do we put Santa in flip flops? Is Santa gonna, you know, be with the big bishop's cane or whatever? You know.
No, that's right. I know that's so true. I mean, it's you just as you would make any other, you know, as Santa evolves to better meet the potential customers, so too do you do with your own content, with your own marketing, with your own stuff like that. I mean, it's really, and I haven't thought about this in forever, and you just got me thinking about it. So I'm gonna get it out there. I mean, that's, you know, I think a big part of, if you're taking something from Santa, it's to take advantage of the opportunities that you have. I mean, in college, I was a writing tutor for the one time my school ever offered a class about the history of Christmas. And one thing I remember being one thing I did not know, and maybe you, the viewer, the watcher, too, is that a major part for certain cultures about where this started was that, you know, before there was Santa, before there was anything else, we had a big feast in the winter of all the meat that was going to go bad and the plants before everything got cold. Before it got too cold to do anything. So that's where so much of this holiday came from. And then it's like, okay, that's not necessarily something, thankfully, we have to worry about in our day, but we still have, you know, generation after generation is used to that big feast, that big family holiday thing. And Santa became taking advantage of that. There were already people primed to do this big feast, this big family thing there. And so if there's nothing else you take from it, then you can do this. Yeah.
That's an excellent point. No, because I think, you know, too, it's almost kind of like, you know, because in marketing, really there's, you know, there's innovation, but at the same time, you know, you can only, nothing's, you know, you can almost argue everything's been done before. So how do you take that, whatever your industry is or whatever it is you do, and how do you build off of that? You know, if you already have, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time you want to do something new. You can look at what's happening right now. What is something that you can take advantage of, and capitalize on that? And how do you take it and shift it and tweak it for, you know, adding Santa Claus to that time of year? You know, and all of the Christmas stuff that comes with it.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, and as you say that, I think of, you know, don't be afraid to, something we've, you know, mentioned here before, but it certainly fits in the context of Santa, is don't be afraid to build on top of what you already have. I mean, it's you know, growing up, you know, I used to get the Christmas ornament catalog book, and you look at that, and in that Santa does literally anything you can think of. I mean, I have a scuba one. I have one of him riding a giant hockey puck that's much larger than his body. I mean, that doesn't even make sense in the context of hockey. Like all of it, but all of this is when you have something, you know, but each of that, they thought, okay, there's a market for this because people want to see more Santa. They can, you know, it's an endlessly you know, improvable, changeable thing, which is what you can do with. And that's not to say that you have something as popular as Santa, you business owner listening to this, but you do have something that people like. You do have something that folks want, and you can change it, and don't be afraid to build upon it in some way.
Absolutely. And to jump off of that, another lesson we can learn from Santa Claus is making a list, and which is essentially, you know, collecting data. You know, so he makes a list, checks it twice, you know, not only, you know, like think about your customers and listen, you know, just like you're saying, there's a market for the Santa Claus on the hockey puck, and then there's a market for the Santa Claus, you know, surfing or whatever. Listen to the needs of your customers, which is, you know, the kids writing you letters, if you're getting comments on social media, or if you're not sending out surveys, you know. I mean, the nice thing about Santa Claus is he's well known enough that we all kind of send letters because we, you know, he doesn't have to ask for them.
Right.
But as a company, you may have to. And that is so valuable. Understand, you know, what do the kids want for Christmas this year? What, you know, and what demographic are we not reaching? You know, are we just making, you know, Santa Claus ornaments with surfboards when a lot of our clients or customers want Santa Claus on the hockey puck? You'll never know that if you don't chart any of that data, and you don't, you know, listen to the letters, you know?
Right. No, it's so true. I mean, it's interesting because as we talk about it, I think of like all the different things you've seen with Santa that like make you laugh or giggle or go, oh, geez, look at that. But like each of those had some intent behind it. there was nothing accidental about this at any part of the process. I mean, even if, and each of us, I think, so there's something about Santa or even just holiday marketing in general that some things we like more, some things we don't. If you're totally hard up for ideas, look at, what is it about a particular Santa or a particular aspect of this that speaks to you, and then there's something to build on with that. Like,
absolutely. Also, another a list thing in terms of like data and all that. You got the naughty and nice list. If you're doing marketing, marketing exercise, if you're launching a paid search campaign, or you're doing all these things, I think a big mistake that people make is they don't chart their progress, and they don't create these lists of, it's almost kind of like, what strategies give you coal, don't get a return, and what strategies give you cookies. It's like, oh my God, we used these keywords, and this was, make your list, naughty and nice. This keyword got a lot of attention. This kind of video was very helpful, and a lot of people, we had a lot of retention. So keep your lists,
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean right. That's true. I mean, if you take nothing else from the Santa myth or the holidays in general, but it really is a testament to the virtue of being organizationally capable. I mean, it's just simply following the list, having a lot of lists. That's such a good point. I mean, I was even thinking of, and it's a little bit darker off key, but like it's, if we're thinking of something else with Santa, it's that, don't be afraid to put a better face on things that maybe haven't gone so well, or have setbacks. I mean, I'm just struck by, again, thinking of things from my Christmas history classes, that how early in the 1900s, I mean, the holiday was very different. In a lot of cases, it was, frankly, you'd have poor people going to the homes of richer people and threaten them until they were given money, and much of what our current Christmas and all that is sort of built to get away from that idea. I mean, Santa was developed, not developed, I mean, I think it was built in a lab, but a lot of the Santa myth was to put kind of a softness on that, and there's nothing wrong with that either. That's better than going to rich people's homes and banging on the door. But but again, as to just one more way to show the endless utility of Santa, it's that there's nothing wrong with putting a slightly better spin or a face on things that perhaps did not go as you had hoped.
Absolutely. And I think we're in a time right now where that's really important, because we've got, elephant in the room, we're in the middle of a pandemic,
Right.
And so
doing this on Zoom, yes, and not in a studio together. Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think that we've sat through a lot of commercials this holiday season where it's like, oh, we know things aren't how they used to be. And it's like, I don't want to hear that. Right, I want Santa Claus, so understand, like, read the room, because you can, that very much feels like the company banging on my door being like, give me money. I'm like, I don't really want to do that. So if you can find, and I think that's another a great lesson is the humanity of Santa Claus. If you find that humanity and you find the things that we're looking for, we want that comfort, It doesn't mean you have to completely ignore everything that's going on, but I think there's a lot to be said for, whether it's, holiday marketing or any marketing, putting us in an experience and taking us out of where we're at, because you're almost kind of, I think too, you're selling that experience.
Yes.
In a way, because part of it too is, when you open presents Christmas morning, the radio flyer wagon only lasts so long. But if right. That was like, that moment is what you'll remember, whatever the wrapping paper was, and coming down and seeing that, if you could take your products and put it in the context of like a human experience and sell that experience, as opposed to making it all about the toy you want for Christmas, like that's not just like how that's not what Santa's about. Like that shouldn't be what marketing is about too.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I was just it just hit me as you were talking on top of that. I mean, if one more thing, if nothing else, Santa is a symbol of, doing versus talking. I mean, it's it is so much of like what you said about how many of those ads are like, oh, it was a very difficult time. And instead of that, like it's you don't have to remind me how difficult his time is. If I see Santa, eating cookies and laying out presents, I'm in. I don't need to hear anymore about the difficult time. I know it's a difficult time, but I'm glad to see Santa doing this. And there's something in that with your company too. I mean, it's for every, tinkly piano and violin strings of while someone intones about this challenging era, seeing doing something, giving to charity, donating to the food bank, to whatever else, while with over Santa giving out presents is infinitely more emotion easier to connect to emotionally.
Absolutely. Yeah, and giving is another great thing we could take from Santa. And I like the book of Cat Lev. She says it all the time. When you give, you get that return. And I think that's another great example. It's I don't know whether it's like giveaways are like the easiest example, or giving products to customers is a one example. But I think another one is the Q&As that you do with Bilal. I think are fantastic because it's kind of like, because it really is, and he says that at the end of his videos a lot, where it's, I do this on my Saturday mornings because I want to help people and I want to give them information. And, if you watch that, you understand that he cares, and because you can genuinely see it, you can genuinely feel it. And that goes back to that humanness as well. That's so important in marketing. So it's in your head so that, it creates, it does nothing but strengthen, I don't want to say his brand because he's an attorney, but his ethos in a way, because, you feel like you can trust, that trust is there. You built that trust, and that, so now when you are like, oh, I need help, who are you going to go to? Bilal, who's there every Saturday morning to answer your questions. Like, that's incredible, like make yourself accessible and give information and give things, and it will come back to you,
Yes, and to be, from having done those things with Bilal, and I always learn something whenever he talks, whenever I do one of those with him. And I think it's also, you said it establishes trust, but it also establishes, and this might be a little specific to his industry, it establishes trust in his own expertise. And that's something that you can do when your business gives away something too. I mean, it's you might, whereas if whether it's you're giving out something tangible or you're giving out information, the way it operates on multiple levels is not just an act of charity, but it's also an act of education. It is you are informing people about what it is you do. And even if someone, doesn't buy from you, then they're liable to think of you as an expert, as a knowledgeable voice, and, return back to you when they do need whatever it is that you offer.
Absolutely. And there's kind of, I don't know, with giving things away, you're getting this kind of, I don't know, it works to strengthen your authority and your ethos. If you're like, all right, I make this hand lotion, I know this is the best hand lotion, especially like in the winter,
Right.
If and I know we've talked about this a million different ways, but if you have some talking head being like, I loved this hand lotion, nobody's going to buy that. All right. It's but if you give these things away, not only do you have the power of, you've created almost a friend there, especially, hopefully they like the product, but you're also saying to them, we know this is so good, we're going to give it to you for free because we know you're going to come back for it, which is huge, because then what you also get is, the returns you don't see, which is the word of mouth of, texting or whatever, like, oh, I got this for free. Like, maybe you're like, oh, I didn't think it was going to be that good. And then because it was free or whatever, and oh my God, it's great. But, or, especially if you're looking for people that, if you're really like trying to zero in on the kind of people who would want your product, if that makes sense, the more you can tailor who you're giving these things away to, and you get reviews, you get feedback, whether it's good or bad, it's all helpful.
Right. And just to return to what you said, that's just the same as Santa making the list. I mean, that's so specific too, about he's not like he's given the wrong kid, the wrong gift, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, I mean, and that's, and you always, and that even ties into the whole thing about that, to get as treacly as possible, but the idea of the holiday spirit. I mean, there is a real tangible thing to giving, even for you doing it. So that absolutely makes sense. If there's ever a time of year to give something away for the betterment of your company or not, this is absolutely it.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you can do it all year long, you know,
Right.
and that's just how to keep, you know, if you're finding you're feeling stale, you're feeling like you're not reaching new people. Oh, and this is another one. Okay, so
Mhm.
this one is more a marketing lesson from Coca Cola, but
Okay. Which who
uh,
has as claim much a claim to Santa as anyone else at this point? Hmm.
exactly.
Hmm.
The lesson being, don't be afraid to partner up. Now, I think in this case, you
Hey,
know,
there we go.
you if you're Coca Cola, you're lashing onto Santa with that partnership. You know, as established as Coca-Cola might be, they're not Santa Claus. So by
Right.
partnering with Santa, you are driving an awareness to your brand, and you have that power of that imagery together,
Mm,
that will drive you to the top. And another example
right.
of that is partnering with like another brand that is similar to what you do, but not necessarily a competitor. So
Mm.
let's, you know, if you're a skincare brand, and you know that maybe your audience would coincide with let's say like a makeup brand. You know, it's
Yeah.
almost like, all right, put on your makeup during the day and then use this to get it off at night. You know, if you partner with these brands, you're getting double the visibility, and you are you can tailor it so that you kind of know what audience you're reaching. You know,
Hmm.
so by doing that, yeah, you create a new awareness for your brand, and you also create friendships, which
Yes.
are also nice. But often I'll see,
Absolutely.
like people will, if you buy Supergroup is one, not one of our
Mhm.
clients, but Kat had bought something, well, a workout thing,
Okay.
and in the package was a sample from Supergroup. And this was
Oh,
not, it was from a totally different company, but the company had
okay.
partnered with Supergroup, which is the skincare brand.
Okay.
Um, and how cool is that? Because you try it and you like it, like
Hmm.
it's like little free publicity. I mean, you pay for the product, yes, but
Right.
it's a way to kind of, you jump the barrier of having to get into the house. You know, you're already
Certainly.
there, and there's a trade-off. You know, if you're doing it in a way that is systematic with this other brand, that next month you flip it around, they put their stuff in yours, and it creates this kind of symbiotic relationship that expands your audience.
Certainly. No, I mean, it's a great idea if you can get something like that to work. And it's, and obviously, you want to go for the biggest, most connective partnership possible, but don't be afraid to explore one that might be a little more niche. I mean, just you were mentioning about, suntan and all that, the suntan lotions and things, the skincare in the sun. So maybe it would behoove you to partner with some kind of swimwear group, or, someone that sells sandals, or alternatively, folks that backpacking and tents and camping equipment and that kind of thing. I mean, and does that mean that all of your skincare customers are going to be the folks spending 7 days in the Adirondacks? Absolutely not. But you might have enough of a crossover there that might be worth it to you. Just as you'll have the people that maybe are taking the entire holiday at Aruba this year versus staying in the Catskills. But it's that's one more way, one more group that you can get forward, and as long as it's cost effective to you, that is one real way to make friends and grow everyone's business.
For sure. And I think the other thing too is it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, just like the presents, Christmas morning, and Santa, you're selling an experience. So, if you are, whether you're creating a campaign that's partnered together, or whether you're giving away that product with, let's say, the sunscreen that goes with the hiking gear, you have,
Yeah.
inserted yourself into this experience, whether they like it or not, because
Mm,
they might,
right.
there are like the occasional people that'll take it and be like, oh, whatever, throw it out. But if somebody's, getting ready for a camping trip, if you've chosen who you're partnering with smartly, then what they're
Mhm.
going to do is they're going to have that camping trip, and what are they going to use the whole time? Your sunscreen,
Right.
and so they come away
Exactly.
with it
Yes.
with that. So you're selling that
Hmm.
experience instead of being like, this is the best product. Like that's not going to reach anybody. Nobody wants to hear that. But if you can
Right.
gift someone an experience, they'll come back to that and be like, ooh, and especially knowing that they got it for free first. It's kind of like it goes back to that giving, and knowing that, this company is not so stiff that that they aren't afraid to loosen up and give things out.
Right, exactly. That and now that's interesting. And boy, I hadn't thought of it that way, but you're so right. I mean, that's we talk so much about like humanizing your company and putting a human face on the brand, and what is more humanizing than, you know, one company reaching out to another and being able to work together. I mean, that's something that can draw you in just by virtue of that. I mean, I just thinking off the top of my head, how many times you see two brands working together and it just in a way just makes you turn your head. Like it's just like, oh, okay, I'll look at that just by virtue of that occurring. And
Yeah.
yeah, no, that's really great.
I think it also creates this sense of, I don't know, a sense of trust from the consumer as well, because
Mm.
we can smell fear. Like I'm like we can't.
Yes.
That's
Oh
why
yeah.
the talking head interviews don't work. That's why these things, you know. So if
Hmm.
you I'm trying to think of a better story, but I can't. This is just, I'm going to
Uh,
reference RuPaul's Drag Race.
okay, here we go. Yeah.
But it's worth it.
Uh-huh.
You know, the winner of one of my favorite seasons, Bianca Del Rio, is an older drag
Oh,
queen. And
okay.
she's fantastic, you know, and she
Hmm.
was never afraid to help out, you know, all the other girls, you know, at different
Mm.
points in the competition. And, you know, when it was
Right.
the final episode, when they crowned the winner, RuPaul gives feedback to all of the queens and finalists. And something that stuck out for me ever since that, and I think about actually this all the time,
Hmm.
is that RuPaul was like, you know, what impressed me the most and what I think is so wonderful about you, Bianca, is that you were, you know, because in these competition shows, reality, things get so catty. She was like,
Yes.
you're never afraid to give help to the other girls, or, you know, tie their corset or whatever, because you were never threatened. And I think that is
Mm.
something that is incredible, because if you
Mm.
can partner with
That's a
another
good point.
brand, if you can give up some of
Mhm.
that spotlight and you know, open yourself up, that tells us as the consumer that you are so confident in your brand that you are not afraid to put yourself out there in a way that
Right.
reaches us. Because you're not
Yes. I
threatened.
mean,
Show us that you're not threatened, and that's makes an incredible impression.
paradoxical though it may be, I mean, there is it making your company a little bit vulnerable like that really does show that you aren't threatened by someone else making money, someone else. It's, you know, and we're and just to be clear, I mean, it is the tone that Noel and I may have taken during this portion of the conversation may sound like it's some great sacrifice, but it's absolutely not. If you're selling sunscreen, you're not really competing with the folks selling backpacks and tents. It's you might have similar customers, but you aren't like in direct competition to each other. This isn't like win loss. This is that the horriest of cliches, the win win. I mean, it behooves you to do something like this. I mean, not as like your entire as the only part of your business model, but as one other way to move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think too, as a consumer, you know, we in marketing can draw that line between, you know, the you're not, if you're sunscreen, you're not competing with the swimwear company, but to the layman, it really is just kind of like, it is that vulnerability of, you know, oh, they're not threatened, oh, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It's that confidence,
Yes.
that is incredible.
Right.
Um, which brings me to another point.
Mhm.
Don't be afraid to ask for help. Um,
Oh, there we go. Yes. Mhm.
because Santa needed Rudolph to get through the fog. You know, he couldn't have
Right.
done it on his own. So if you're, you
Certainly.
know, if you're working on these things, you're working on your own marketing, and you get stumped. You know, I think there's
Mhm.
a certain point where whether it's bringing in outside help in any capacity or hiring a marketing company, I think that they're really, you know, there's a lot of strength in that not vulnerability, but knowing your limits and knowing when it's okay to ask for help and when you just can't cut through the fog of all this stuff on your own. Because
Mm.
whatever sacrifice it may be, whether it's, you
Mhm.
know, hiring someone, hiring a company, or, you know, just having to open yourself up to ask what you might think are stupid questions, it can only help you in the end. Because if you think about it, you know, if Santa was so stubborn that he was like, nah, I've been ripping on Rudolph for years, I can't let him
Right.
on now, you know,
Exactly.
then he would have sacrificed a whole night of you
Oh, at
know,
least
giving gifts, you
ruined his
know.
business
So
model. Yeah. Mhm.
exactly, exactly. And so, you
Mhm.
know, there's a lot to be said for, if you are so stubborn that you won't open yourself up to those opportunities, then your sleigh is never going to fly, you know.
Yes. Oh, absolutely that. And extrapolate quite further, if you're that stubborn that you're not looking at opportunities, your business isn't going to work anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you know, yeah, that's it's, you know, open to new opportunities, and, you know, I'd adjust that. I mean, and remember when we say looking for help and all, you know, asking for help and all that, if that feels like a step too far for you right now, then, you know, a half step before that might be to look somewhere else for inspiration or answers that you haven't previously. I mean, I know, you've referenced CAD a few times, and I will here as well, is that looking at what your competitors are doing is never a bad idea, painful as or annoying though it may be. That, I mean, we're not saying you have to ask them for help, but necessarily say, hey, see what they're doing, see where their struggles are, see where they're succeeding. And, then you can also ask for help too. And just from what you were saying, I mean, another lesson we can take from Santa is that don't be afraid to utilize new technologies. I mean, Santa used Rudolph for how long before incorporating NORAD, and then finally Google Maps and all these new navigational technologies to make it easier to find out where all the kids' homes are.
Yeah, and that helps you reach a whole new audience, because you're also in tune with what we're experiencing with because every day the consumer experiences this growth. But right. for example, I grew up with Santa on NORAD, and I remember every Christmas Eve waiting to sitting at the desktop computer and refreshing, and what an experience, if you didn't have that, you're creating a space for yourself when you create these new experiences and these new developments. You're opening yourself up to a generation of kids that did grow up on the computer that now are sitting on the site and refreshing. Just keep moving.
Oh yeah, I'm a little bit older than you, and I remember, the 11 o'clock local news on Christmas Eve. The weatherman would tell you what the weather was going to be, and then you'd get, the screen would tell you where Santa was, and it was, and the meteorology degree gave you something for how it's coming over the state, and and but yeah, and that too will only advance. I mean, I'm sure we're only a few decades out from, Santa downloads himself into your home, or that sort of thing. Like,
yeah, you could FaceTime Santa these days. They'll let you Skype him, which is just incredible to me.
So Santa's really been at the forefront of using navigational technology since the beginning, whether it was, NORAD, the internet, Google Maps, or genetic deformity. He's really found a way to harness it for the betterment of the company. There's a lot of Santa-related stuff for you business owners out there to take from this. So thank you so much for coming on to talk about that, Noel. That was a real blast.
Of course, anytime, Greg. I was down to talk about Santa.
Oh man, I know, right? Now we've got to figure out a way to do this again in like April. But yeah, no. So as ever. Thank you so much for watching. On behalf of Website Depot, my name's Greg Benevent. Take it easy. Have a good night.